Hi there. Welcome to Functional Family Fridays. As you can see, my space is a little different today. So I'm coming to you from live from Muskoka. So welcome. So as promised, we are talking about the six most emotionally damaging types of parents. So this week we're talking about the controlling parent, which to me is one of the most dangerous parents, right? So I'm going to be following my notes. So you'll see me sort of moving my eyes and this and that because there's a lot to say and I want to make sure I cover it. So many parents don't realize how powerfully their words and their actions have an effect on their child's self esteem and self worth, both positively and negatively. Remember, children are like sponges, they'll take everything in, both consciously that the parent's doing, but also subconsciously. So I know it feels, scary to think that as a parent, we're under the microscope. We really are 24/7. Children are watching what we're doing, what we're saying, and what we're not doing and what we're not saying. And it's all getting downloaded and filtered through them. So, this is why it's imperative to be a healthy parent. All right? So, we're going to talk about what is a controlling parent. They're also known as authoritarians and helicopter parents. Why? Just because in what the name says. Helicopters hoover. Okay? Controlling parents hoover over their child's life. They're deciding every choice, every behavior, and every action and decision that they make. Okay? Extremely controlling. So basically, they're stripping the child of their free will. That's why, to me, controlling parents are extremely emotionally harming. Okay? Because once you take someone's free will, they're no longer able to be the authentic person that God made them to be. So you're stripping away a child's authenticity by being a controlling parent. A lot of controlling parents love, and they actually love the fact that they have mini me's. Oh, look at him or her. They're exactly like me. So again, last week we talked about ego. Controlling parents definitely are ego as well. Okay? So there's an old school belief, you know, about what being a good parent is. In fact, many parents still believe that without strict discipline, strong punishment, and complete control over their child's belief and behavior, that the child's going to grow up to be lazy, disrespectful to them and to authority and to elders and to everybody, and irresponsible adults. Although some of that is absolutely right. We have to, shape the children into being healthy, responsible, dependent adults. However, they only have it half right. Discipline is necessary. However, unhealthy bullying and control is not. There's a difference. Okay? So let's talk about the characteristics of a controlling parent. Well, controlling parents tend to be very angry. They're usually very negative and pessimistic in nature. So they're not happy people, right? They tend to become bully parents, right? They use forms of unhealthy punishment and they bully using threats or intimidation. Again, my mother, she was great at that. She used to look at you a certain way, and through that look alone, you knew that if you weren't quiet or behaved, you were going to get it when you got home. So there was a lot of fear, okay? And remember, these are children. These are the children looking up at you for love because you've given them nothing but love from the moment they were a child. All of a sudden, as the child starts to get older, more independent, this sort of fear-based characteristics of the parent starts to creep up more, right? So they tend to be more intimidating, very threatening. They could tend to become violent or abusive, physically, mentally, or emotionally. Okay? So again, controlling parents are typically unhappy and they're emotionally wounded themselves, which means they still have unresolved pain and trauma from their own childhood. So they've just suppressed it. And then when the child, does something or behaves a certain way, it triggers all that suppressed emotion. And being the authoritarian parent, they believe they have authority over the child. And that's why they come off very angry and controlling. So controlling parents are very reactive people. They're very defensive. Like they're always quick to react, right? Because of their insecurity. They're very insecure. They come off looking, or you might feel that they're in control, but it's really their insecurity that makes them controlling. Because people that are confident and in control of their emotions don't need to intimidate others or bully others. So it may look like they're in control, but they're really not. Okay? So they're highly stressed and again insecure. And they tend to be completely unconscious to their child's emotional needs or all their needs, but specifically the child's emotional needs. So again, they tend to have ego. Everything has to be their way or the highway. You've heard it. While you're under my roof, you've heard them say, you do things my way or get out. Controlling, okay, and intimidation. Because they know damn well where's the child going to go, okay? So they take advantage of their authority as parents. That's how they get energy. Because they know that child isn't going anywhere. That child needs them for their survival. So they take advantage of that place of authority. And they also have very high expectations of their child. Their child, because remember, because of their insecurity, they worry a lot about what people think of them, all right, or being judged. So their expectations for their children are extremely high. Again, they have to be the superstar in sports, or that gymnast that's great, or, the academic, achiever. So, because they live through their children. They know that the children is a reflection of them, so they take it personally. So if their child's not an achiever, or they deem as a loser, they're going to feel like they're a loser. So they have very high, unrealistic expectations for their child, okay? And they're very rigid, they're unreasonable, they're unapproachable, and some of them are very scary, okay? Very scary. If you've never grown up with a controlling parent, then you'd never understand this. But as a child, this, looking up at a parent and having this person use their body language to intimidate fear in you, it's really scary, okay? And if you have grown up, you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So there's different types of control. I'm trying to keep it very simple for this video, but there's basically physical control. A parent could use religious control or psychological and emotional control on a child. So let's talk about physical control, okay? So again, I'm touching on this just to keep the video at a small size. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out. So physical control is using physical intimidation or threats, okay? Like spanking, hitting, or beating a child, right? Physical isolation, right? Sending a child to the room or into a corner. You're isolating them because we're meant to socialize. And living through COVID, you realize this, that we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to socialize. This is why a lot of us are struggling at this time as well. Okay? So, isolation, pulling the child's ears. My mother used to love to pull the hair. Intimidation through body language, the dirty looks, the scary glares, right? The even the physical stances. So, for instance, if a parent points at you, or fingers crossed and frowny face, a lot of the non-verbal communication, body language can extremely intimidate as well, right? So we have to caution when a parent is emotionally healthy, their disciplinary action can easily, when a parent is emotionally unhealthy, they think that they're disciplining their child, but they're really can become out of control. And it could easily escalate to physical violence or abuse. And how do you know that? By the way it causes the child any injury or physical suffering. Okay? You know you've crossed the line, right? Now, I'm not saying that parents, again, we're not perfect. We're going to get angry. We're going to lose it sometimes. But parents that are healthy emotionally will know where that limit's coming and they'll step away, they'll do their breath work, they'll contain themselves, and then go back, okay? Or when you're highly stressed, they know their limitations. They know when they're about to lose control, okay? But when your emotions are unhealthy, you don't know where that line is. And often, controlling parents will cross that line, all right? I wanted to share an example of physical intimidation that I had as well as a child. I wasn't a child, I was 13 years old. And I remember being completely humiliated. Actually, I'm going to save this for my next point. Okay, so hold on to that thought. So let's talk a bit about religious control. So, religious control. Now, before we get into that, it's important to teach a child to believe in something bigger than their own ego, whether it's God, the universe, because if we're just living within our ego, we become these people that are controlling and unhealthy and basically full of ourselves. So we need to be accountable to something bigger than our own mind and our own self. Otherwise, we never emotionally grow or evolve or do thoughtful, compassionate things for other people. So it's important for a parent to teach a child about God or the universe, okay? But when religion becomes controlling and the parent takes away the child's free will, right? Or doesn't allow them to question or follow their own spiritual path, that's religious control. And let me give you examples of when religious beliefs and expectations are put on a child. When you instill fear of God, God will punish you. This is God's wrath for your bad behavior. Instead of a loving God, that's control, okay? When you tell a child what to believe, okay? When you tell the child about what their sexual practices should be and their preferences. You have to love a woman. You can't be lesbian or gay. This is all control. Because again, you're stripping the child of their free will and who they are, okay? And their sexual identity. If you're instilling how they have to dress, what they have to wear, who their friends are, who they can marry, or that they have to get married, or that they have to have children, to carry on the legacy. This is all religious control. It's all control under the umbrella of religion and God. And, you know, I'm here to believe that that's not what God's will is. God is a loving God and, you know, created all of us to be unique and authentic. So instilling your fears about God is not love. Okay, that's control. So the next one I want to talk about is psychological, which is mind control, and emotional control. Okay, this is when a parent uses blame or shame on a child. So, for instance, placing judgment on a child, telling them they're not good enough, they'll never amount to anything, comparing them to perhaps their siblings or other children. Well, look at your sister. My mother used to do that as well. I was a straight A student growing up. My twin sister, not so much. And I remember that she used to get hit and punished a lot for not having the grades that I did. So that not only was unfair to her, but it also put me in a very awkward position as her sibling, right? So that's her using judgment on a child. Very dangerous, okay? Blaming the child for the parent's misfortune. You know, I cursed the day you were born. It's all your fault. If it wasn't for you, I could be this. I could have done that. But I sacrificed myself for you, you know. So they hold a lot of that over the child's head, making the child feel very shameful, right? You're the reason things are this way. My life would be so much better if it weren't for you, okay? So a generation ago, parents never considered their child's emotional needs. They only focused on their physical needs, you know, like putting shoes on their feet, a roof over their head, food on the table. And again, they had it only half right. You have to take care of the child's, it's your responsibility to take care of your child's physical needs. They never asked to be born. But we're realizing now, as 21st century parents, that emotional, you know, mental emotional needs are extremely critical for a child's well-being, okay? They believe that the reason they didn't do that, number one, I don't believe they had the intellect, you know, as much as we do through the knowledge that we're learning and expanding and evolving as parents. But they also saw emotional being emotional as a sign of parent weakness, not strength. That they would lose control of the child if they showed their weaker side, which we would come to realize is completely untrue and the opposite. So going back to the story I was going to tell you, this was about blaming and shaming. Well, I was 13 years old, and again, I told you I was a straight A student. But for whatever reason, I got a very low mark in, I think it was geometry. Couldn't figure that out to the life of me, okay? So I was terrified to bring my report card home to my mother because I knew that they had this expectation that Rita was the smart one, you know? So I came in with an F in geometry and I was terrified. So that day, when I mustered up the courage to tell my mother, I was with my twin sister and our two best friends. And do you know that she literally pulled me over her knee and beat the crap out of me, right? Because right in front of my my best friends, which at 13 years old is completely devastating. Devastating. So, you know, I could have fought her, but I actually felt sorry for her at that time that she wasn't able to pull me down because at that point I had become stronger than her and I let it happen just for her own ego. But that is an example of shaming and shaming a child. I was 13 years old. You know, teenage is devastating to begin with, but to be spanked like a little infant in front of your best girlfriends, yows. All right, so that's an example of a controlling parent. So, what happens to a child that grows up with a controlling parent? Take a wild guess, okay? Again, the child's sense of free will is taken away. So they're constantly living in fear. They don't know who they are because they've learned to be what this parent wants them to be. So they're not authentic. They're not living an authentic life. They're being whatever you want. I remember being a chameleon. What do you want me to be or say so that you'll love me? Okay, so I didn't know who I was. Took a lot of emotional healing to heal those scars, and learn who I actually was. And you never feel good enough as a child from a controlling parent. Everything you do is never good enough. You never measure up. Therefore, you always feel unloved and unimportant and not of value. You always feel guilty. You're constantly apologizing, for things you may not even have done, but it keeps you safe, all right? You become highly insecure. You lack self-confidence, all right? Because you're always tiptoeing around, making sure you're not pissing someone off or, upsetting your parent. So you become unable to make your own decisions, right? You become dependent because you've been told what to do and what to believe. So who am I to make my own decisions, right? Because you're afraid of being judged. You become dependent on people and become a follower because you don't know how to be independent. You've just learned to do what you say and nobody gets hurt, right? So children tend to go one of two ways too. They either turn inward, they become very shy, lonely, they self-isolate, socially awkward, they become addicted to sometimes ease the pain. They'll become addicted and, they'll emotionally eat or do drugs or drink, whatever's going to numb the pain of all this pressure. Or they become people pleasers. They're addicted to people pleasing. Whatever's going to make people happy is going to then give me some value, okay? So they don't know how to say no, all right? Or they tend to lash out and become rebellious. They become the fighter. No one's going to hurt me again, so I'm going to stick it to you. So they have a problem with authority, being told what to do, usually can't keep jobs, and they become very ego-based because it's like, how dare you? No one's going to tell me what to do. But overall, these children are unloved, all right? They're unhappy, and they feel unimportant. And that's so sad. Okay, so 4 reasons why parents become controlling, okay? The need to control another person comes from fear, right? So they grew up with fear themselves. Remember, the cycle of dysfunction has a trickle down from generation to generation. So these parents are fear-based, okay? They themselves are unhappy, insecure, feel unloved, and feel unimportant. They want to feel like they're important by throwing their weight around, okay, and puffing themselves up, but that's only to mask their own insecurity, unhappiness, okay. They're mostly wounded. They have unresolved pain and trauma from their own childhood. They could have been physically or sexually abused as children, emotionally neglected, or had a negative role model as a parent as well. Okay, so again, the addicted parent raises an addicted child, and the cycles continue. 4th reason why, because they have low energy. Okay, so when you're fear-based and you're negative and you feel unloved, this is all creates low energy. And because we need energy to survive, you're going to try to get energy any way you can. So being the authoritarian, the controlling parent, they get their energy from their children, okay? Just because their children are vulnerable. So because of their low energy, they become controlling parents, very reactive, okay? So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about who and what controlling parents are, right? So if you were either raised by controlling parents yourself, you can understand why, okay? Or, God forbid, you see yourself as a controlling parent, okay? Here are my recommendations to help you then, love, okay? You need to start the emotional healing process. You're never going to get better as long as you have suppressed negative emotions or you're going around controlling your children. Because they may stick around because they're small, but I assure you, as they get older, they're not going to stick around and you could potentially lose them. So you have to start the healing process, okay? So what I want to do as my gift to you to start that, you could do one of two things or both. Go on to my website, thefunctionalfamily.ca, download the free emotional checklist. That's going to give you instant answers to where your emotional health is right now, today, okay? Just so you can see where you're at, all right? So the free emotional checklist on the functionalfamily.ca website. Or number two, email me, send me a message below that you'd like a free chapter to my book, Parents with Price Tags. Heal yourself of family dysfunction and learn to love your children unconditionally. Because I've got a chapter of controlling parents in the book that I'd love to give you if you want to do more reading on it. All right, so just email me, say, yes, Rita, I want the free chapter, and send me your email, okay? So I'll add you to my mailing list. So I hope you found today's functional family topic very useful. If so, please send me your likes. Feel free to join the free Facebook group, all right? Because here you'll get access to all these videos. It's called Stressful Family Relationships. Click on it, join now, okay? So this is how we stay connected. Follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Reiki Rita Roberts. All right? So till then, stay in the light of hope and love. Know that this too can be healed, all right? And feel free to reach out with any questions that you might have. So have a blessed week. Till next week, I'll see you on Functional Family Fridays. From my heart to yours. God bless. Stay well.